Holocaust, Hidden Feelings of Pain. Interview of Frieda Wolfinger, a Holocaust survivor.
Here we are at Frieda Wolfinger's house. She's a willing participant to do this interview. Frieda, before we begin, we'd like if you could tell us something about you.
Yes, I could. I was born February 28, 1923. The place is called, where I was born, Rechnitz. It's in Austria. It's near the Hungarian border. It's a small town. And when I was 15 years old, we heard from a Hitler who marched into Austria. And we didn't know, we were children, we didn't know much. But then on the radio we heard, we had a little radio already. It was in 1938. We had a little radio already, and we heard that Hitler is coming. We didn't know what's gonna happen. But then we heard that older Jews from the small towns have to go to the big city, and in it was March when they moved into Austria, the Nazis, and about in May, we had to leave. All the Jews, not only where I was born, but from all the small towns had to go to Vienna. This is the main city, this is the Vienna from Austria. This is the capital. And we all had to go there, and we were there from 1938 till 1942, till we went to the concentration camp. But I will tell you also, in between those years, when we were in Austria, in Vienna, my father was not allowed to work. And if a kid like in your age was spit in our face from the Nazis, we couldn't do anything against it. I worked with my mother, and they spit in her face. And I couldn't say one word, don't do it, because they would kill me there. And it was horrible the whole time. And we lived from the Jewish organization in Vienna. Whatever food there was, either we had to pick it up or eat in that place. And it was very, very bad time. I don't know if you heard about the Kristallnacht. Did you ever hear about the Kristallnacht? Was the night where the Nazis, all the Nazis, you know, they burned the synagogues, they throw stones, it was just horrible. It was just, you know, and you had to wear a star of David. You had to wear on your clothes sometimes. And it was just, you couldn't go out at night. You were not allowed to do anything. We had some food, but not too much, you know, it was very hard to get. And we knew people were, the Nazis, they called names, and they came and picked you up, but you didn't know where they took you. So then they put you in a big place, like in a school. All the Jewish people, not all at once. This was in 1939, somewhere 1940, but we never knew it was a concentration camp. We never heard that word. Then it was horrible. The whole thing was just, it was so scary because the Nazis with their uniform and with their swastikas, they wore black uniforms, they were different kinds of section of the Nazis. And it was just horrible. I mean, they pick not only, but most of the Jewish people, but also Christians, Catholics or Protestant, you know, they were political prisoners. They took them also to concentration camps, what we found out later, not right away, because we never knew what is a concentration camp. So we were from 1938. I had two sisters, my brother and my husband, whom I married later in the United States. They went illegal. They were both 16 years old to the Swiss border, and they went illegal to Switzerland. But I, with my two sisters, my mother and my father, we had to stay in Vienna. We didn't have any place to go. And in 1942, the beginning of February, it was about 10 days before my birthday, they called us and we had to get, you know, like a little bundle. And they took us also to a big place, you know, in a school, and we didn't know what happened. And the next day they took us to a train where they, like a cattle train, a cattle cars. And they took us there, and we traveled for 10 days to Poland, through Poland, through Poland, and then from Estonia. Then we arrived after 10 days in Riga, and this was a ghetto. A ghetto was, you know, where they, from all over Europe, the Jews.
No, they weren't.
Yeah, but they were different kind of ghettos, but this was, we went to Latvia, this was near Russia. Latvia, this was Estonia, Latvia, and what is the name of the other place? In the moment I forgot. We went to Latvia, and the place, the name was Riga, R-I-G-A was it called. And first we were in ghetto for about a year, not even a year. And this was horrible. This was the old section of Riga. And we were like in one little tiny room where there were rats, and there were like cats where there were rats, and we had to sleep there. But I tell you first, when we arrived, this I should have told you first, when we arrived in Riga, there was a friend there whom I knew in Vienna, a few people who I knew in Vienna. And my parents and my one sister, they were separated from me and from my other sister. We were separated. So I asked that friend, where do they take my parents? And the Nazis, they said, oh, they're gonna come by bus or by truck. And you go in this and they come later. But that friend told me, you will never see your parents again. They take him right away to a place where they have to dig their own graves and they have to stand around and shoot them. And this where they took him. And we went to the ghetto, my sister and I, and there we had to get up every morning around 4 o'clock, and we had to stay in line like soldiers, you know, and then they put us in commandos where to work, and we hardly had any clothes. And Riga is exactly like Russia, Latvia. It's like Russia, the climate, very cold, you know, it was February, and we had to work. Then after a year from the ghetto, they built the concentration camp in Riga. In the concentration camp, this was even worse. And they were the Nazis, the Nazis were to stay every day in line, and we slept like in on wooden things, and and a lot of people died, of course. We had hardly any food. We had like, let's say, soup with potato peels or something, just to survive so we could work. We were young, and most of the elderly people they killed right away. And we went through many gallows, what is a gallows? Where they hang people. Maybe if you saw a Western, where they hang people. If somebody, let's say, stole a piece of bread where they worked or what, or let's say, once in a while there was somebody, a good person, where we worked and they put a piece of bread there and we took it, to take it, they gave it to us. But if somebody saw you from the Nazis, they hung you. And this went on for another year. Then all of a sudden they said, oh, the Russians are coming closer. And they sent us to Germany. So we were in Germany in concentration camp. The name of the concentration camp is Stutthof. This was in Germany. And there they also sent us to work, in different places. I took care, I was by a farmer with other girls and took care of cows, and we slept with the cows in the stable. But at least we took care of the cows, and when nobody was there, we milked the cows, and we drank the milk right from the cow. Here it would be poisonous, but we were hungry. And at least by that farmer we got once in a while boiled potatoes or something, and we drank the milk. And when I worked, I wasn't with my sister together, my sister was someplace else. Then I heard she also came to Germany and passed by a sheep where I took care of the cows, and somebody screamed. And so I thought it was my sister. My sister lived still two. The one sister was killed with my mother and father. And my other sister, she was still alive 2 months before we were freed from the Russians. And they killed her. She was, I think she was 18 that time. She was a beautiful girl, and I was the only survivor. There were aunts and uncles also in the concentration camp. Not with me, they were in Poland, they sent them to Poland. And I was the only survivor for my family. I had a brother who was in Bolivia with Julius, but I was the only survivor from the concentration camp. And we were freed from the Russians, and this was in March 1945. But the war wasn't over yet, because Berlin was the main target, because this was Hitler's headquarters, and the war wasn't over till May. But we were freed already in March. And then we could do, we didn't have any hair. We had striped clothes, with the Staff David, and we were freed, and we were all, maybe I don't think I weighed 50 pounds or 60 pounds. We were all starved, We had lice. We were so skinny, but some people, they were wagons there from the Germans who were fleeing the war, but we chased them down. And a lot of people from us who came out from the concentration camp, because we were so hungry, we didn't have real food for years. And they were like, what is lard? It's from a pig, the fat. And they had big things there, And a lot of people went with their hand like this and they ate the fat and they died. After, because your body was not used to these things, you see. I didn't touch it, I went slowly. The Americans took better care of the concentration camp survivors. They put him like in a hospital, but but the Russians, they were not that intelligent. They didn't care. They gave a hoot. I mean, they freed us, but they also, Stalin was then the Russian, he said, I give you 2 weeks, you can do whatever you want. So they gave a damn about us. I mean, they freed us, we were thankful, but the Americans who were freed from the Americans and from the English, they took better care of the concentration camp survivors. From us, from the Russians, a lot of people died because they started to eat that grease and these things, you know, whatever we could get. So this was in 1945, in March, we were freed.
So,
Give her a breather. Cut it.
Huh?
I said to cut it, to give you a breather.
This is a picture about 2 years after the concentration camp. This is a picture taken in 1945, about November. The name of the place was Kaunitz. It's in Westphalia in Germany.
After or during?
After the concentration camp, about 8 months after the concentration camp. This was about the same time as maybe a month later. The place was also the Kaunitz in Westphalia. This was in 1945, about October, November, I don't remember exactly. This is a picture in 1948. These were nice years, but still my thoughts were always in the concentration camp. These are my 2 sisters. The younger one, her name was Hilde, and she was 13 years old when she was killed. Right away when we arrived in the concentration camp. My other sister's name is Rosie, and she was 15. No, she was 16, I think. 15? She was 15. She was 15 when she was killed.
now that we know more about Frieda Wolfinger, we'd like to ask her some questions in detail. You know, there were a lot of religions, other than the Jews in the concentration camp. Did you ever hear of Jehovah's Witnesses?
No, I didn't, but probably there were a lot of concentration camp, and they probably were, but I myself never heard of them.
Mm-hmm. Our next question is, how do you think you survived the Holocaust, afterwards,
I think I survived it. I mean, I was hit. I was sick when after I was freed. I had typhoid. But I worked. Some people survived it. Not too many, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Our next question is, what kind of work did you have to do in the concentration camps?
We fixed roofs. We assorted, my English isn't perfect, clothes what came from the front, from the military, and they were still, we had to sort out the coats and everything, and we had to sort out the coats, and they were pieces from the people in who were killed. And this was the work, and different other work, whatever they gave us, we had to do. We had to dig and we had to.
How'd you feel about God at that time, during?
I tell you, during the concentration camp, I said to myself, our house was always, we believed in God. But I said, if God could see that, how many people getting killed without ever did any harm to anybody, then I said there couldn't be a God. This was my belief, but later on I changed my mind, but that time.
Okay, did you ever think of escaping?
We thought about escaping, but there was no escape.
No ideas?
No ideas, or we were thinking about it, but we never would had a chance.
When you were a kid, did you ever think that you'd actually be in something like that?
Never ever.
Did you ever get punished or tortured,
Punished, yes.
Like how?
They didn't give us that little soup or a different kind, that piece of bread.
How they, why?
Because they punished you. They punished you for nothing. They punished you. It was fun for them to punish. Whatever they wanted to do to us, they could do.
How long were you in the concentration camps?
3 years. 3 years and 1 month.
What did you think about most, while you were there?
I wish I would be
Freedom.
with my parents. My parents would be alive, and I wish I would be a child again. I never knew about these things. And this was my wish, but it never happened this way. And when we were freed, we still were looking. Maybe my sister is alive. And we looked, and there were newspapers. And we looked, they were always putting names in. Maybe this one was alive. And some people, sometimes they knew. They thought they found people, Some brothers found their sisters and vice versa. And and after the concentration camp, we had to wait 4 years to come to the United States.
I know you answered this question already in your summary, but did you ever get sick, during the concentration camps?
Oh yes, very often. Especially before we were freed, I was we slept on a wet thing all the time. And I had arthritis, I could hardly walk. I was we had to march. Before we were freed, we had to march the whole night. And they really wanted to drown us, but then the Russians were too close. And I could hardly walk, but we thought maybe we're gonna survive, and so we walked. So we walked, and then the Russians came on a big tank, and there were about 40, 50 and a big, what do you call it? Not truck, we had those wheels, trunk.
Personnel carrier?
No. Where you go in the desert with, what do you call this? Not a jeep. Where you can shoot, I don't know what this thing is called.
Probably, and there were guns sticking
Yeah,
armored personnel
Yeah.
carrier.
And what else would you like to know?
Well, that's it. So,
This was our. There are many details, but this would take days and books to write,
Did you think Hitler was actually going to keep his promise of killing all the Jews?
Of course,
That was what you were thinking of all the time?
of course.
Oh, and so what do you think of this experience? What have you learned of all this, even though it's
Das-
miserable?
It's good that every school should learn about the Holocaust, and it should never ever be forgotten. Never ever be forgotten. Every child, it doesn't matter what religion or what color, what religion or what, every child and every person should know about the Holocaust. It should never be forgotten. And they asked me from my cousin, my nephew is a professor at Dartmouth College, and he asked me Yale University. I should give an interview, and they're gonna put it in the archives. My friend's gonna do it in spring, and I. And there's a museum in Israel, it's called Yad Vashem, where there's archives, and everything is written with all the pictures, with all the concentration camps. And there's a flame burning, there's a special hall where a flame is burning, and there are all the names from all the concentration camps, and the flame never dies. And they are all tourists, everybody. And the place it's called Yad Vashem. And if you ever go to Israel, you should go there, because it is something. There you see all the pictures from the concentration camp, but not only from the concentration camp, also before the concentration camp, from certain towns, from certain what the Nazis did.
Okay, now even though you weren't like tagged with a number, what do you still remember your number?
Yes, my number is 60,970. 60,970.
60,000.
60,970. Frieda Wolfinger, a Holocaust survivor. Maybe we should put music in the back.